This is Leonardo AI. It's an AI image generator and a whole lot more. I'm excited about Leonardo AI because it fills a huge gap for me in content creation. It's an infinite source of visuals for my videos and social media that, in many cases, you just can't find in the stock media libraries or anywhere else. And it's really fun to play with. I know you want to get right into generating images and exploring all the other cool features of Leonardo AI, but first we really should look at the homepage to understand the lay of the land. Now, if you just can't wait, go ahead and skip on to the next chapter in this video where we'll start generating images. Across the top of the homepage, we have Leonardo's AI tools, and these are the same 6 tools that you'll find over here in the left menu under AI tools, just a different way to get to them. The first and main tool is Image Generator, and this is where you generate images by typing a text prompt. The next tool over is the Real-Time Canvas, and it's also an image generator, but to generate images with this tool, you use text and you draw at the same time on the canvas. Leonardo uses the text prompt along with what you draw to create the image. It is a wild tool and so much fun to work with. Your generated image changes in real time as you draw or modify your prompt. Next, we have the Canvas Editor, and this lets you use AI to edit an existing image. You can add things, remove things, change the style of parts of the image, expand the image, and some other really neat tricks. Then you have motion, and motion will take your generated image and add movement to it. So instead of a still image, you end up with something that moves for a few seconds. Now, this is not usually a full-on video, although it is a moving picture, so technically I guess you'd call it that, but it definitely adds some style and flair to what you're creating. Then you have real-time generation, and this is another just wild tool. It's an image generator where the image develops, changes, and evolves as you're typing the prompt. You can make changes to the prompt, and every time you add, change, or remove a word, you'll see the generated image change immediately, like right there in real time. And lastly, we have the Universal Upscaler. And not only does this increase the quality or size of the image like you would expect with an upscaler, but also it lets you make changes to your image using a text prompt. These tools that are across the top and this first 6 items down on the menu are definitely the things that you're going to use the most. Actually, you'll probably find that you only use a couple of these all the time, but you have those other ones there tucked away in your toolbox if you need them. Over on the left menu, down toward the middle, you have the Advanced menu. Within the Advanced menu, you have Fine-Tune Models. Here you can see all the models that you can use to generate with, and there are many models available. Some are better at certain styles than others. That's why they're different. Now, don't be overwhelmed by the number of choices. When we get to generating images, I'll show you that it's not as scary as it seems. The next item you have on the Advanced menu is Training and Data Sets. While there are already a bunch of models that you can pick from, Leonardo also lets you train your own model. To do this, you use a bunch of images of the subject that you want to train the model on, and this collection of images is called your data set. This is what you would use if you wanted to be able to generate AI images of yourself, a virtual influencer, or any other creature or object. The last item here in the Advanced menu that we're not going to get into, but I want to show you that it exists, is the 3D texture generation. And with this, if you know what you're doing, you can upload 3D models as OBJ files and add texture to the 3D models. So back to the home page here. The next major section that I want to show you is the community creations. These are images that have been created by other Leonardo users. Now, beyond being an excellent source of inspiration, because this shows you what's possible in Leonardo, it's also really helpful because it shows you which models were used to create the style. So if you find something that you like, click on it. You'll be able to see the dimensions, what features were used, what model was used, and all the other details that went into creating this image. And then you can use that model, the settings, a similar prompt to come up with an image that looks kind of like what you're seeing there. Now, I'm not saying you should copy this and recreate this image exactly, but you can use this as a guide to get the image you want that looks similar to what you're seeing here. A word of caution when browsing through the community creations. I can lose hours scrolling through here and looking at all the things that have been created and just being amazed that none of these things really exist. They were all created from words and models. Some of the images are just absolutely wild. Take a look at this. I mean, who would have even thought of this? We can click on that and make it a little bit bigger. And here, let's see what's behind it. So this, for example, used the Leonardo Vision XL model. It used the PhotoReal V2 workflow. They added the elements of dragon scales and fiery flames, like who would have thought of that? And what they were going for, here's the prompt. It looks like they were going through a musical note symbol inside an apple made of crystal. I don't know that that's exactly what they got. I don't really see the musical note unless it's in the fire and I'm just not seeing it. But what they did get is something that's really, really cool. It's what I'd call a happy accident. Sometimes as you scroll through, you'll notice that somebody was going for something and not quite getting it. So you'll see where they changed the model or changed the prompt or changed some settings to get what they were going after. And that can be really helpful in learning how to get what you want when you're creating your own images. I have to leave this community page now because, like I said, I could spend hours here and you probably don't want to do that with me. We're up at the top of the homepage, and what we're going to do now is we're going to go to image generation, which, by the way, if you click this pink and blue button up in the upper right hand corner, that'll also take you to the same place. That's the main image generation area. If you click over here on image generation in the menu, same place. So we can get to that 3 different ways just from the homepage. Doesn't matter which one you click. And that'll bring us to this page, which is our main AI image generator page, where you type in the text prompt and you get your image. Now, I'd like to tell you, don't be overwhelmed when you see this page, but I gotta be honest, when I started playing around with Leonardo, I found this all very overwhelming. There's all these things down this left-hand menu, there's all these options here underneath the text prompt, there's tabs down here. What am I doing? But stick with me because this doesn't have to be overwhelming. For the most part, we're going to type a prompt. We're going to pick the model we want to generate the image, and that's going to be that. But all these other options, they can be used if you want to, but you can ignore them too. So don't get excited about those. All right, let's start up here with the prompt box. So without touching any of the settings at all, we're just going to come up to the prompt box and we're going to paste in a prompt. You can type it in if you want. I just happen to have some that I generated using ChatGPT that I really liked and want to try. So what I pasted in here is a group of dogs having a tea party in Victorian attire, complete with fine china and tiny cakes. Now we'll just hit generate, and our images will appear right here. Now this is the generation history tab. Our new ones will be added, and in reverse chronological order are all the other images that I have generated. So let's take a look at what we got. We got these 4 images. I'm going to click on the first one, make it bigger. And by golly, we have some beautiful doggies having their afternoon tea. And they are really into tea. Even the artwork around them is like teapots and stuff. We've got the Victorian attire happening. We'll have one tiny cake on the table for all of them to share, so I don't know how they're going to work that out. We have another one here. The flowers are just too much. And these guys are all ready. They need an etiquette class because we should not have paws on the table. But they're adorable, so we're going to let them get away with it. If you like the image as it is and are ready to get it, you just click this little download image button right down here. But there's some other things that you can do. You can copy it to your clipboard. You can also remove the background if you like. And then we have some upscaling options here. So we have the smooth upscaler. This is really good for cartoony things, 2D style stuff, and things that you don't mind getting smoothed out and losing some of the fine detail. You also have the crisp upscale, and that's better for things like photography, probably an image like this, where you want to maintain that fine detail. You can also go into the Alchemy upscaler, and this one is really good, especially if you have hands or faces of a human being that didn't come out so good in the original generation. This does a really good job at fixing those problems. But let's close out of here. We're going to generate another image, but this time I want to show you what some of these settings and options can do for you. So come up here to my prompt box. Let's just delete this out. And I'm going to type something really simple here. I'm just going to type an old fisherman. And suppose my brain is just not wrapping itself around all these other fancy details that I need to add in to get a great looking image. Well, I can get some help here from Leonardo. I can come over and click these dice on the left, and come down to improve prompt, and it will take my simple "an old fisherman" and expand it out and get extremely detailed about what we want in that old fisherman. Now you want to pay attention here because this not only works on the style that you're going to get, but it talks about every detail. So in this case, we have that he's gazing out over the horizon, and maybe that's not what we wanted. Maybe we wanted him at a post office. I don't know. But you want to pay attention and change any of the things that don't quite work with what you were going for. But if you like what you've got here, that's great. You've got your prompt, you're good to go. The next thing you need to choose is your model. So you can select the model from this drop down right here. And you look through here and you say, all these different models, I don't know what they do. How do I know which one to even pick? Well, there's a couple of ways to see what the models look like. One of them is from the home page, we could browse those fine-tuned models. That's all these models. We could browse from there and get an idea of what the models do. Another thing we can do is just click select other model here, and you have a page here where you'll be able to see an example of an image created by each model and a description of what the model's good for, what it works for, and what it doesn't. Lightning, for example, the one that pops up first, that is a good all-around model, general use. It tends to be pretty fast, and it works for anything from photorealism to painting kind of styles. If you come over a little bit and look at Kino, you'll find that it's good for doing cinematic imagery. You can look through each one of these individually. I can tell you the ones that I tend to use the most are the Leonardo Diffusion XL. This is a versatile model, it's a stable diffusion, and it even works well with short prompts, which is kind of my favorite way to go because I am no good at typing out paragraphs worth of details. I also like the models that are really good at producing realistic photo results, like the Vision XL model. Vision works better with longer prompts, and even though I'm not good at longer prompts, I can use that prompt improver that Leonardo has to get from my few words to something longer. You'll see in the models there's some real specific things. As we scroll down toward the bottom, you'll find things that are really good for anime, things that are good for, they've got a model dedicated to battle axes here. Who knew? Pixel art. So if there's specific styles that you're looking for, scroll down toward the bottom. They will do very specific things. The ones up toward the top tend to be a little bit more flexible. I do like this vintage style photography model. This one is really good at creating images that look like old photographs. Now again, don't get overwhelmed by this. I know there's a lot to pick from here, but what I find is that there's just a handful that I use regularly. And based on the styles of content that you're creating, that's probably going to be the case for you too. For instance, I don't do anything with anime, I don't do anything with RPG or game characters or that kind of thing, so I know to ignore those right out the gate. Instead, I look at Lightning and Kino, Vision, and Diffusion XL. Those are kind of my go-tos. But I also keep in mind that there is a 3D animation style here, which I do use sometimes, depending on what it is that I'm working on. That one is really fun for creating things that look like 3D animation characters. On the same page here, the pop-up that came up after we clicked Select Other Model from the image generation page, you also have community models. These are things that folks in the community have created. You can experiment with them. Sometimes there's not even a description, but just an image of what it looks like. These tend to be pretty specific. On the Your Models tab, this is where any models that you have created would show up. We don't have any yet here for this demonstration. And then you have favorite models. So if there's models that you like in any of these other categories, you can click this little bookmark up here in the upper right hand corner on it, and then it will be saved to your favorites. So you could really narrow that down and have this tab just be for the models that you found that work for you. Now I'm going to close out of this. We've got our elderly fisherman deal here that we're trying to generate. The first model option is Leonardo Lightning XL, which probably works just fine. I'm going to come down and try Absolute Reality. As you might imagine, Absolute Reality is a model that works on realistic things that look like they're actually pictures and not paintings and whatnot. We have some other options that we can pick from. The first one here is which style of pipeline that we want to use. Now, this only applies if you're using Leonardo's Alchemy. Now, Alchemy is an option over here on the left side. You can turn it off or you can turn it on. Some things you need to know about Alchemy. Probably first and foremost is you'll see when we have Alchemy turned on, then over here our generate button tells us this is going to cost 20 tokens. But if we come back over and we turn Alchemy off, now it's only going to cost 4 tokens to generate these 4 images. So Alchemy does cost quite a few tokens. But then what does Alchemy do? Well, it's a pipeline and it does all kinds of stuff. The best way I can get my head around these pipelines is that they take what you have entered in the prompt box, and they also know what model they're using. They massage all that input before it gets sent off to the robots to do what they do, and then they might work with it a little bit after the robots do their thing to help make sure that what you're generating is exactly what you want. Now, these are options that you wouldn't see in something like DALL-E or ChatGPT, and I think that's because the pipeline in the simpler image generators is just built in and you never see it, which means you can't customize it in any way. Leonardo gives you control over customizing that pipeline. For instance, you can pick the style here and tell it what you're looking for. You can leave it on dynamic, and Leonardo and its robots will figure it out on its own what it's supposed to be doing, but you can also drop this down and tell it specifically that you're looking for photography, and then it will follow that style through the pipeline. Now, while we're at this and we're making all these changes and adjusting settings, let's just go ahead and get through them all. Add elements is something that I don't use very often, but if you look through the community gallery and see the other images, and in some cases where people have used this and how it works, keep that in the back of your head. It might be useful for something you're trying to create. If we just click Add Elements, you have the picture that sort of shows what it's doing to the image, and then you also have the description underneath of what it's going to do. So for instance, we could add this crystalline element. And that's going to take our image and add this crystalline element into it. Or Inferno, we're going to get something that's, obviously the image we create is going to have some fire going on. Now the elements that you see on this page that you can add, I have the box checked that says Show Compatible Only. And the reason that's there is because there are many different elements available, but they don't all work with every model. For example, the coloring book element, which would make our image come out like a coloring book page, is not compatible with the model that we've chosen, that ultimate reality model. And that makes sense. We're trying to generate a realistic photograph, and that really just doesn't go with coloring book pages. And there are all kinds of elements that you can add in here. Dragon scales, for instance, not compatible with our particular model, but you can see how in this image that they're using as the example, the dragon scales turn this guy's fancy purple blazer jacket thingy into a dragon scales texture. That's kind of wild. Or fierce flames. This element has the character coming out of, fiery flames. I'm not going to mess with any of the elements right now, so we're just going to close that back out. I just wanted to show you it was there. The next thing we want to look at right here is negative prompt. So I'm going to click that on, and then you see you now have this box up here, the negative prompt box. And here's where you can tell Leonardo what you don't want to appear in your generated image. The prompt box is where you said, here's what I want you to give me. This is where you can say, but don't give me any of this. For example, we generated our dog pictures down here, and suppose they all came out with bow ties on, which sometimes happens, and we don't want bow ties at all. We could put bow tie in this negative prompt, and it would tell the model, hey, don't put any bow ties on here. Negative prompts can also be super handy for dialing in the results you get when you create humans. So here I just pasted in my negative prompts list for when I'm creating human beings in the images, and it includes things like ugly, disfigured, cut off, extra fingers, deformed, all the way down to bad anatomy. And these are things that I've found helpful to tell the robots, I don't want any of this. Does it always work? No, absolutely not. But more often than not, by adding these things, it reduces the amount of times that these things show up in the images that I create. We're going to go ahead and leave that on because we are creating a human in this image. So we've gone through everything up here at this point. We know which model we want to use. We're going to do absolute reality. We picked the photography pipeline under Alchemy, and we have Alchemy turned on. We're not going to do any elements, even though we look through them. We added negative prompt, which includes these items right here. We should look to the left and see that we are generating 4 images. We could change that if we want, and the reason that you might want to change this is maybe if you want to get some results quicker, or maybe you want more options to look at, or you're just feeling lucky and you'll take the first one that comes up, you could change it to 1. If you want more options to pick from, you could bump it up to 8. 4 seems to be a pretty sweet spot for having the best chances of coming up with an image that actually works for you. But of course, money makes the world go round, and in Leonardo, it's tokens that make the world go round. So when we click generate up here, as we have this set now, it's going to take 20 of our tokens. As a free user, we have 150 tokens per day, and that resets to 150 every day. But by using 20 for every time we generate, we're going to have about 7 generations per day that we can work through, which sounds pretty good, but especially in the beginning when you're experimenting, you can go through those really fast. So here's what we're going to do with this one. We're going to generate once with Alchemy on, because if we turn Alchemy off, it goes down to 4 tokens per generation. So we're going to generate this first time with Alchemy on, and then we're going to turn it off, keep everything exactly the same, and see what kind of difference we get. We'll go ahead and hit that button. We should have our fisherman here in a minute. And here are our 4 images. So let's go ahead and zoom those in a little bit and see what we have. I think those are looking pretty good. I mean, that's very highly detailed. That looks like a fisherman to me. Let's scroll through what else it gave us. Some more really, really good images. All right, so for our experiment here, we wanted to try that with Alchemy on and with it off. So now when we turn it off, we get this little caution down here that says that the model has been trained at 640 by 832, so you'll likely find the best results using those dimensions. And it'll put a little star next to the dimensions that it wants you to use. You can click that and make it happy. Now when we had Alchemy turned on, we didn't have that problem. We didn't get that alert. It automatically changed the dimensions because that's part of what Alchemy does. And also remember that the output dimensions are different than the input dimensions. So while Alchemy is using a 768 by 512 input, it's outputting it at 1344 by 896. We turn Alchemy off. We're going to go back to our 640 by 832. Let's hit the generate button on this so that it can get going. Now, if you're using Leonardo free, you will have a limited number of times you can use Alchemy each day. I believe it is 5 times per day that you can use Alchemy, and then after that, no more for the day. It says over here that it's, if you hover over it, it says that it is currently a paid only feature, but I've been finding when you're using Leonardo free, I'm getting about 5 of these per day. Now, I don't know, there might be a thing that after 7 days or something, it just turns it off completely. I can't say for sure about that. But let's look at the difference of what we got with Alchemy and without it. These 4 are when we had Alchemy turned on. And then these 4 are when we had Alchemy turned off. And I think these are looking pretty good. I mean, they're definitely not, I don't see anything horrible about them. Maybe that hair's a little weird. And I don't know, the hat's a little frayed, but that's probably a good thing, depending on what you're looking for. So if you're being token conscious, you might want to go ahead and try for 4 tokens and generate without Alchemy and see what you get. But with it on, we definitely got a lot more depth and color, richness. I don't know. I'm not an artiste, so I don't know how to put it into words. You can see for yourself what you get. And you might be wondering, you see this PhotoReal up here? Why didn't I just use that? When I turn that on, it automatically changes my model to Leonardo PhotoReal. So that is a 1-to-1. If we're doing the photorealistic, it's using Kino, but it's using this PhotoReal pipeline. It's going to automatically add Alchemy. I can't have PhotoReal on without having Alchemy on, and it's going to take it up to 26 tokens. I can, with this one, change if I want to go from cinematic to some other style. And these are all going to be photo type styles. If you know what you're looking for here, like you want a monochrome, you want it all in one color, or you want something that looks like a portrait or retro, you can pick one of those. It by default goes to cinematic, and that's usually pretty good, unless you're looking for something else. Now, the stock photo down here, I've used this one before, and it comes out in a style that looks like stock photos, sort of clean and bright typically. But we're just going to leave this on cinematic, what it defaulted to. I'm going to go ahead and generate. It's going to cost me 26 tokens, and we'll let it do its thing. Something else over here that you don't have an option about when you're using Leonardo free is public images. And what that means is if you're using free, you can't turn that off. All of the images that you generate will be available for the public, anybody using Leonardo to see and copy and do whatever. If you're on a paid plan, you can turn that off, and then all your generated images are private, so only you see them. And you'll be able to set that on or off each time you generate if you want. So if you're creating something you want to share with the public, you can go ahead and turn that on, say, yeah, let these generations be shared. And when you're done with that, you can flip it back off and keep everything else that you create to yourself. So let's take a look at what we got with PhotoReal selected. Got these 4 images. Oh my gosh, that is detailed. Like, I feel like this guy is right here, like with me. I like to be very thorough in what I'm showing you. And it drives me a little nuts that I can't in this case, because there is no way that I could go through every model, every pipeline, every setting here, every setting in the left menu, all the different options. The best advice I can give you is look at the community gallery and see what's behind the outputs that you like. Look at what model and prompt and all those details that they used, and that'll give you a hint of what you might want to try. But also, we're dealing with AI. So you can do the exact same thing 2 times in a row and come up with different results. And that's sort of the fun and the frustration of it. A few more things I should point out over here on this left menu. The input dimensions, we already sort of covered that. I just leave that alone unless it pops up with one of those yellow caution warning things saying, hey, you should probably change this. Then I pick the one that has a star next to you. Other than that, I don't really pay much attention to this. Under your advanced controls, you have the aspect ratio and then the corresponding dimensions. You also have guidance scale here. Now, if you have Alchemy turned on or you're using Lightning XL, the guidance scale will be disabled. But assuming you're using something different, maybe we're using diffusion and we're not using Alchemy, now your guidance scale is enabled. And guidance scale tells the robots how much weight it should give to your prompt. Leonardo recommends this be set at somewhere between 7 and 9, and their preference is 7. If you set this up too high, it'll give you a warning and tell you that you could end up with some weird results. Hey, sometimes it's fun to play with, but I tend to leave this just at their recommended 7 all the time and let it be what it is. We're not going to get into these advanced settings, but briefly, the recommended sizes turned on is what allows it to fit the dimensions to what model we're using. And then you have the ability to use a fixed seed, which is a little more complicated than what we want to talk about today. And then you have the scheduler, which might have an impact on the noise in your generations, but the scheduler is a paid only feature, so we're going to skip that as well. Now let's get out of these advanced settings because there's plenty to do in Leonardo without being in the advanced world. Let's go back up to the prompt box here and this little dice icon. Now this is where we improved our prompt, where I think I said an old fisherman. I clicked the dice and I said improve prompt. Now that's not available to me now that this prompt box is so full, because you have to have less than 200 characters in this box for the improve prompt to work. It's not telling me, well, you can't improve this again because you already did. It's saying there's more than 200 characters in here, so I'm not going to play with it. Also, new random prompt, and this will generate who knows what in terms of a prompt. You hit it and you see, what are we getting here? A diesel punk neon jungle pulsating with life and decay. Yeah, that's really, really detailed. But something I want to tell you about here, random prompts or improving prompts, those are not tied to your tokens. However, there is a limit on them. So I have 89 remaining, and that resets in 20 days. So I'm guessing this is maybe a 3-week cycle. I don't know. Maybe you get about 100 of those for 3 weeks in the free plan. I'm not sure exactly. But I did want to point out that it's not tied to your tokens, but there is a limit on how much you can use it. But we're going to use it anyway. I'm going to leave the model on Diffusion XL. I'm going to use this prompt. I'm going to leave Alchemy off. With Alchemy off, my pipeline options are none and Leonardo style. I'm going to leave that at Leonardo style. Don't want to add any elements. I'm not going to add a negative prompt to this. This is like a weird sci-fi cityscape kind of thing, so it won't benefit from my don't use funky hands or anything like that. I do see an alert here on the image dimensions, and it says it wants to be at 1024 by 768. So I'll come down here and click that option, and that made my little alert go away. Let's hit generate. This is going to cost us 11 tokens. And you might be asking, well, how in the world did that just go up to 11? Well, if we were outputting smaller images at 512 by 512, it was only going to cost us 8. But when we took that up to its recommended 1024 by 768, now it's creating bigger images, takes more work. So now we're at 11 tokens. I'm okay with that. We're going to hit go, and we will see what it comes up with. Now, any of these generations, and like I said, this shows all your past generations in reverse chronological order, and it shows you at the top of each one of these sort of the snapshot of the settings, what model you used, the pipeline, how many images you created, and the dimensions, both the input and the output. And then you have these 3 dots over here, and then you'll have some options. You can click to generate again. That'll say use the same stuff I had before and just recreate. You can view more generation info, or you can copy the seed, and copying the seed would allow you to place that in another generation and say, I want you to start from this point. And copying the seed and using that in your generation is really helpful if you're trying to create consistent characters, or an environment or image that is really similar to something you've created before. If we view the generation info, that brings up all the details, anything we want to know about that creation. So let's close out of there and go back. Our new images should be ready by now. And there we have it. Let's take a look. You might notice with this sign up here, it doesn't necessarily do a great job with words to start with. There are some things you can do to improve that, but that's a little beyond what we're trying to get through here today. Oh, there's our second image, and I think what we're really looking at is an abandoned futuristic city that is being reclaimed by nature. But given what we asked it for in the prompt and what we ended up with here, I think is pretty good. And I think it demonstrates just the wide variety that you can get in Leonardo in different styles here. We've gone from dogs having a tea party to an old fisherman that looks like he's truly, alive and sitting with us, to some abandoned city being reclaimed by nature. But now let's do something else that's just a little bit more fun. I'm going to come back over here to platform models. I'm going to choose the 3D animation. I'm going to come up here and we're going to create an image of Will Smith eating spaghetti. I do not have Alchemy on for this, so this was a 5-credit creation. And here we have our 3D. Let's go ahead and click and see that bigger. I'm not sure what's going on here. We have some kind of a fork, chopstick, noodle combination. I don't really know. I do see the Will Smith resemblance there. We got a plate of spaghetti, and I think he's writing on it with a pen or something. Also notice how it picked up some of our prompt. It looks like it's trying to say will here. These just always crack me up no matter what I'm doing, but especially if I put in a well-known person in one of these 3D things, they just crack me up every time. Oh, and here, check out this. I don't know what's going on there, but that is pretty funny. Could you fix this if you didn't want it to just be funny, if you wanted it to not have these errors that I think are hysterical? Yeah, you sure could. You could use one of the upscalers and work with it there. Or you might just want to improve the prompt, and we found that we could do that by clicking the dice and improve prompt over here, but there's another option. So I'm going to copy our prompt of Will Smith eating spaghetti, and I'm going to come to this tab down here that says Prompt Generation. I'm going to click on there, and this allows us to create multiple prompts at one time and pick the one that we like. So we can come down here, enter a basic prompt idea. You can do something as simple as, like it says here in this example, a car, and it'll come up with a bunch of different options. You choose how many you want it to generate. Do you want 2, 4, 6, or 8 options there? And we will click ideate. Now, this is taking, see here it says 89 left. So this is taking from our allotment of prompt generations, not from our tokens. So this is using the same limit that you had when you click the dice and do an improved prompt or new random prompt. So we're going to say ideate on that, and we'll see what it comes up with. A futuristic Will Smith enjoying a plate of steaming spaghetti surrounded by holographic projections of different pasta dishes. Will Smith dressed in a sleek black suit, twirling a forkful of spaghetti in front of a stunning cityscape at night. A playful Will Smith wearing a chef's hat and apron, cooking up a delicious pot of spaghetti in a bustling Italian kitchen. Will Smith sitting at a candlelit table, savoring a bowl of spaghetti while a live jazz band plays in the background. The scene is reminiscent of a classic Italian restaurant. If you like one of these for the most part, but you want to make a little tweak to it, you can hit this little drop down and edit it. I'm just going to go with generate and see what that comes up with. I left it on the 3D animation style because that's what we were trying to look at to begin with. And let's open this up and see where we go. All right, Will's doing something with spaghetti there. I'm not sure who that is hanging out with him. He's definitely got the chef's hat and apron on. This one is looking a wee bit more realistic than what we had before as far as what's going on the table. I don't know why we're just so focused on just plates of noodles. If anything, you can say that these are definitely fun. If you're not using Leonardo AI yet, and you'd like to have some fun generating these images and videos and whatnot, and save yourself some time finding material for your content creation efforts, there's a link in the description. It is an affiliate link, so if you end up going with a premium plan at some point, I may receive a small commission. The free version might be all you need, or as you get in and start playing around, you might want to explore more with other features like I did, and want to keep creating more and decide to upgrade. And I very much appreciate when anyone uses my affiliate link. Thank you, sincerely.